14, 1998, the members of the Tectonic Theater Project traveled to Laramie, Wyoming to conduct interviews with the people of the town. Over the next year, we would return to Laramie several times and conduct over 200 interviews. The play you're about to see is edited from those interviews, as well as other found texts. Company member Greg Perotti.
My first interview was with Detective Sergeant Pink of the Laramie Police Department. At the start of my interview, he was sitting behind his desk, sitting something like this. I was born and raised here. My family is a third generation. My grandparents moved here in the early 1900s. Yeah. So basically we've had three. Well, my daughter makes it 4 generations. Quite a while. It's a good place to live. Good people, lots of space. Now all the towns in southern Wyoming are laid out in space because of the railroad that came through. That's how far they could go without having to refuel or rewater. Laramie was a major stopping point for that. That's why all the towns are spaced so far apart. We're one of the largest states in the country and the least populated.
There's so much space between people and towns here. So much time for reflection.
Rebecca Hilliker, head of the theater department at the University of Wyoming.
You have an opportunity to be happy in your life here. I found that people here were nicer in the Midwest where I used to teach because they were happy. They were happy that the sun was shining, and the sun shines a lot here.
What you have is you have your old-time, traditional-time ranchers. They've been here forever. Laramie's been the hub of where they can come get their supplies and stuff like that.
Stewardship is one thing our ancestors taught us.
Eileen Engen, rancher.
If you don't take care of your land, then you lose it, and lose your living. So first off, you have to take care of your land, and do everything you can to improve upon it.
I love it here.
Doc O'Connor, limousine driver.
You couldn't put me back in that mess out there back east. Best thing about it is the climate, the cold, the wind. They say Wyoming will drive a man insane, but you know what? It don't bother me. Well, some of the times it bothers me, but most of the times it don't.
Then you got the university population. I moved here after living in a couple of big cities.
University President Philip Dubois.
I loved it there, but you'd have to be out of your mind to let your kids out after dark. And here in the summertime, my kids play out till 11 o'clock at night, and I don't think twice about it.
Then you got the people who live in Laramie, basically.
I grew up in rural Texas.
Zachary Salmon, Laramie resident.
Now, if you don't know a person, you'll definitely know someone they know. So it can only be 1 degree removed at most. And for me, I love it. I mean, we get to go to the grocery store and visit with 4 or 5 or 6 different people every time we go. And I don't mind people knowing my business, because what's my business? My business is basically good.
I like the trains too. They don't bother me. Well, some of the times they bother me, but most of the times they don't. Even though one goes by every 13 minutes out where I live.
Doc actually lives in Bosler, but everyone in Laramie knows him. He's also not really a doctor.
They used to carry cattle, them trains. Now all they carry is diapers and cars.
I grew up in Cody, Wyoming.
April Silva, university student.
Laramie's better than where I grew up. I'll give it that.
It's a good place to live, good people, lots of space. Now, when the incident happened with that boy, a lot of press people came here. And one time, some of them followed me out to the crime scene. And well, it was a beautiful day. Absolutely gorgeous day. You know, real clear and crisp. That sky was that, it was that blue that, you know, you'll never just be able to paint. It's just sky blue. And the mountains in the background with a little snow on them. You know, it was a gorgeous day. And this reporter person, she was out there and she said,
Well, who found the boy? Who was out here anyway?
and I said, well, this is a really big area for people to run, and mountain biking's really big, and horseback riding, and just, well, it's close to town. And she looked at me, and she said,
Who in the hell would want to run out here?
and I'm thinking, lady, you're just missing the point. I mean, all you have to do is turn around, look at the mountains, smell the air, listen to the birds, and just take in what's around you. And they were just nothing but the story. I didn't feel stupid. I I felt they were stupid. They're missing the whole point. They're just missing the whole point.
It's hard to talk about Laramie now, or to tell you what Laramie is for us.
Jedediah Schultz.
If you would have asked me before, I would say that Laramie's a beautiful town, secluded enough so you could have your own identity. Everyone knows everyone. It's a town with a strong personality that most larger cities are stripped of. Now, after Matthew, I would say that we're a town identified by a crime. We've become Waco, we've become Jasper. We're a noun, a definition, a sign. We may be able to get rid of it, but it sure will take a while.
Journal entries, members of the company, Andy Paris.
Moises called and told me he had an idea for his next theater project, but there was a somberness to his voice, so I asked what it was all about. He said he wanted to do a piece on what was happening in Wyoming.
Stephen Belver.
Lee told me that the company was thinking of going out to Laramie to conduct interviews, and that they wanted me to come. But you know what? I'm hesitant. I really don't have an interest in prying into a whole town's unraveling.
Amanda Gronich.
I've never done anything like this before in my life. How do you get people to talk to you? What do you ask?
Moises Kaufman.
The company has agreed to take a trip to Laramie for a week and interview people. I'm a bit afraid about taking 10 people on a trip of this nature, and I must make some safety rules. Everyone carries cell phones. Nobody works alone. I've made preliminary contact with Rebecca Hilliker, head of the theater department at the University of Wyoming. She's hosting a party for us our first night in Laramie and has promised to introduce us to possible interviewees.
I must tell you that when you were first thinking of coming here, when you first called me, I wanted to say, you've just kicked me in the stomach. Why are you doing this to me? But then I thought, that's stupid, you're not doing this to me. And more importantly, I thought about it and I decided that there's been so much negative closure on this whole thing. And the students, my students, really need to talk. I mean, they started talking, and then the media descended and all dialogue stopped. You know, I really love my students because they are free thinkers. You may not like what they have to say, you may not like their opinions because they can be very redneck, but they're honest and they're truthful. So there's an excitement here, there's a dynamic here that I didn't have when I was in the Midwest or North Dakota, because there was so much Puritanism that dictated how people looked at the world that people didn't have opinions. You couldn't get people to express opinions. And quite honestly, I'd rather have opinions that I don't like and have that dynamic in education. There's a student I think you should talk to. His name is Jedediah Schultz.
I've lived in Wyoming my whole life. My parents have been in Wyoming for generations. When it came time for me to go to college, my parents they couldn't afford to send me to college. I wanted to study theater, so I knew I'd have to get it on a scholarship. Every year they have a Wyoming State high school competition, and I knew that if I took first place in duets, then I could get a scholarship. So I went to the head of the theater department and I said, I need a killer scene. He said, here it is. It was from Angels in America. So I read it, and I knew that if I performed it well enough, then I could get a scholarship. And when it came closer to the competition, I told my parents, because, they've been to everything I've ever been in, ball games, hockey games, everything I've ever done. And they pulled me aside, and they said that they wouldn't come to see me if I performed this play. That they felt so strongly against homosexuality that they didn't want to come see their son do probably the most important thing he's ever done in his life. And I didn't know what to do. I had never, ever gone against my parents. But I decided to do it. And all I can remember from that day is going up and shaking my scene partner's hands. And we got a standing ovation. It was amazing. We took first place and we won. And that's how come I can afford to come here to the university. But my parents weren't there. And I think to myself, why did I do it? Because I'm not gay, so why did I do it? I guess the only explanation I can give is that I wanted to win. I mean, it was such a good scene. It was like the best scene. Do you know Mr. Kushner? Maybe you could tell him.
Greg Parodi. We arrived at the Denver airport today and we drove to Laramie. I swear, the minute we crossed the Wyoming border, I saw a herd of buffalo. Also, I thought it was weird that the Wyoming sign said,
Wyoming, like no place on earth.
Instead of Wyoming, like no place else on earth.
Company member Lee Fondakowski.
I stopped at a local inn for a bite to eat, and my waitress said to me,
Hi, my name is Debbie. I was born in 1954, and Debbie Reynolds is speaking, so yes, there are a lot of us around, but I promise I won't slap you if you leave your elbows on the table.
Today the company tried to explain to me to no avail what chicken fried steak was.
Are you from Wyoming, or are you just passing through?
We're just passing through. Company member Barbara Pitts.
We just arrived in Laramie tonight, just past the Welcome to Laramie sign, population 26,687. The first thing to greet us was a Walmart. In the dark, this could look like any main strip in America, with fast food stations, gas stations, but as we drove in closer to the railroad tracks, it was like a turn-of-the-century Midwestern town. Oh, and as we passed the university inn, there was a sign where amenities were usually placed, where it would say, like, you know, cable TV, heated pool, and it said, hate is not a Laramie value.
Greg Parodi.
Today I met with two longtime Laramie residents, Marge Murray and Allison Mears, two social service workers who taught me a thing or two.
Well, the Laramie used to be like when Marge was growing up. Well, it was mostly rural.
Yeah, we all had horses.
Well, there was more land. I mean, you could keep your pet cow, your horse, your little chickens. You know, just have a little bit of acreage.
And I could run around the house with my all-togethers, do the housework while the kids were at school. And if anyone could see me,
And that's their problem.
I just want to make sure I got the expression right here. All together?
well, yeah, I mean, why wear clothes?
Now, how's he going to use that in his play?
So, this was a big ranching town?
Oh, not just ranching. This was a big railroad town at one time. Before they moved everything to Cheyenne, Omaha, Green River, well, now it's just a drive-through spot for the railroad. And what was it, in the 50s? Well, they had one big roundhouse, and they had such a shop, they could lose a complete engine.
Yeah, and they did. My mom worked there.
Your mom worked in a roundhouse?
Yeah, she washed engines. Her name was Minnie. We used to sing her that song. You know that song.
What song?
We'll run for the roundhouse, Minnie. They can't corner you there.
Well, I'll tell you, Wyoming is a bad term of jobs. I mean, the university has the big whoop-de-doo jobs, but unless you're professional, the bulk of the people are working in minimum wage jobs.
Yeah, I've either been in the service industry or bartending my whole life. Now, I know everyone.
And she does.
And I do. And here in Laramie, there's a class distinction. And there always has been. It's the ones who are educated and the ones who aren't educated. And the ones who are educated don't know why the ones who aren't educated don't get educated. That's why my kids had to fight my whole life, because their mother was a bartender.
Never mind, she's the best goddamn bartender in town.
And that's not bragging, that's fact.
But here in Laramie, if it weren't for the university, we'd just be SOL.
What's SOL?
Well, do I have to say it? Well, it's shit out of luck. Oh lordy, you've got the tape where you're getting an education today.
Yeah, I guess I am. So let me just ask you this. What was the response when this happened to Mathew Shepard?
Well, I've been pretty close to the case to know some of the key people. My daughter's in the sheriff's department. As for the gay issue, I don't give a damn one way or another whether you're gay or you're straight, as long as you don't bother me. And if they did, I'd just say no thank you. And that's the attitude of most of the Laramie population, you know. They might poke one if they were in a bar situation. If they were drinking, they might smack one in the mouth. But then they just go about their business. Laramie is live and let live.
I think Marge knows a little more, except she's even willing to say, and we've got to respect her for that.
So, where are you going with this story?
Oh, we're not sure yet, but when it's done, we want to bring it back around to Laramie.
Okay then, there are parts I won't tell you.
Company member Andy Paris. Today, for the first time, we met with someone who actually knew Mathew Shepard. Trish Speaker, owner of a shop in town, referred to him as Matt.
Matt used to come into my shop. That's how I knew him.
This is the first time I had heard anyone refer to him as Matt, said Matthew. Did he go by Matt to everyone?
Dr. Connor.
Well, I got a call about 10 after 7. It's Mathew Shepard. He says, can you pick me up at the corner of 3rd and Grand? So anyway, I pull up to the corner. He's this little guy. Bet you 90 pounds tops, soaking wet. The newspaper said he was 110, but I wouldn't believe it. They also said he was 5'5", but this man was really only about 5'2", 5'1". So anyway, he comes up to the window. I'm going to go in steps so you can better understand the principle of this man. He comes up to the window and I say, are you Mathew Shepard? And he says, yeah, I'm Mathew Shepard, but I don't want you to call me Matthew or Mr. Shepard. I don't want you to call me anything. My name is Matt, and I want you to know I am gay, and we're going to a gay bar. Do you have a problem with that? And I said, how are you paying? Because the fact of the matter is, Laramie doesn't have any gay bars. For that matter, neither does Wyoming. So he was hiring me to take him out to Fort Collins, Colorado, about an hour away. Matt was a blunt little shit. You see what I'm saying? But he was straightforward, and I liked that about him. Maybe gay, but straightforward. You see what I'm saying?
Well, I don't know. I mean, how does one ever tell that about another? I mean, you should really talk to my sister Romaine. She was a very close friend of Matthew's.
We never called him Matthew, actually. Most of the time we called him Choo Choo, because we used to call him Matt Choo, and then we just called him Choo Choo. And whenever I think of Matthew, I think of his incredible beaming smile. I mean, he'd walk in and he'd just be like, and he'd smile at everyone, and he just made you feel great. And he would stare people down in the coffee shop because he wanted to sit on the end seat so he could talk to me while I was working. And if someone was sitting in that seat, he would sit there and stare at them until they left, and then he would claim a spot. Matthew always had a political side to him. I mean, that's all his big interest was watching CNN and MSNBC. And that's the only TV station I ever saw his TV tuned to. He was really smart in political affairs, but not too smart on common sense things. So he moved to Laramie to go to school.
Matthew was very shy when he first came in,
Joan Peacock, Matthew's academic advisor.
to the point of being somewhat mousy, I'd almost say. He was having some troubles adjusting, but this was home for him, and he made that quite clear. And so his mousiness, his shyness, gave way to a person who was excited about this track that they were going to embark on. He was just figuring out wanting to work on human rights and how he was going to do that. And when this happens, a person begins to bloom a little bit. They start to say, wow, there are opportunities here. There are things I can do in this life. I can be important.
I did hear from Matthew about 48 hours before his attack, and he told me he joined the gay and lesbian group on campus, and that he was enjoying it. I mean, he was getting ready for Pride Week and whatnot, and he was totally stoked about school. Yeah, he was really happy about being there.
And in retrospect, and I can only say this in retrospect, of course, I think that's where he was headed, towards human rights, which only adds to the irony and tragedy of all this.
Let me tell you something else here. There's more gay people in Wyoming than meets the eye. I know for a fact. They're not particularly, what do you call them, the queens? Gay people, queens, run around type people. No. They're the ones who throw bail, hay, jump on horses, brand them, and kick ass. You see what I'm saying? As I always say, don't mess with a Wyoming queer, because they'll kick your ass. But that's not the point of what I'm trying to say. What I'm trying to say is I know a lot of gay people in Wyoming. I know a lot of people, period. I've been lived up here some 40-odd years, you see what I'm saying? And I don't think Wyoming people give a damn one way or another if you're gay or straight. That's just what I said. Doesn't matter. If there's 8 men and 1 woman in a Wyoming bar, you stop and think to yourself, who's getting what? You see what I'm saying? Now, geez, it don't take a big intelligent mind to figure that one out.
My understanding when I first came here
Catherine Connolly.
is that I was the first out gay or lesbian faculty member on campus. And that was in 1992, so it really wasn't that long ago. They first asked me in my interview what my husband did. So I came out there. Do you want to know something funny? When you first arrive on campus, there's all of these things that you have to do. So I was in my office and I had a missed phone call. I assumed it was like a health insurance call, something like that. So I called back and I said, this is Kathy Connolly returning her phone call. And I could hear her typing in the background until she said, oh, it's you. And I thought, this is weird. She said, I hear you're gay. I hear you are. I said, uh-huh. But I hear you come as a couple. I mean, I'm one too, not a couple, just a person. So she was a kind of lesbian who knew I was coming and wanted to meet with me immediately. She also told me that there were other lesbians who wouldn't be seen with me, that I would irreparably take them, that just to be seen with me could be a problem.
When I moved here, I knew it was going to be hard as a gay man.
Jonas Sloniker.
But I kept telling myself people should live where they want to live. And there'd be times where I'd go down to Denver and I'd go to gay bars, and there'd be men who were like, where are you from? And I'd be like, Laramie, Wyoming. And there'd be so many men who are from Laramie, and they'd be like, how do you live there? I had to get out, grr, grr, grr. But every once in a while there'd be this guy, oh gosh, I miss Laramie. I mean, I really love it there. That's where I want to live. And he'd get this starry-eyed look, and I'm like, if that's where you want to live, do it. Imagine if more gay people stayed in small towns. But it's easier said than done, of course. Today the company is moving from our motel and heading for the Best Western. My hope is that it's a better Western.
Amanda Greenwich.
Today we divided up to go to different churches in the community. Moises and I were given a Baptist church. As we arrived at the services, we were welcomed by the Reverend himself standing in front of the chapel. This is what I remember from his sermon that morning.
My dear brothers and sisters, I have gathered you here today to bring you the word of the Lord. Now, I have a simple truth to tell, that I tell my colleagues, and I'm here to tell to you today. The word is either sufficient or it is not. Now, scientists tell me that human history, that the world, is 5 billion to 6 billion years old. What's a billion years, give or take? The Bible tells me that human history is 6,000 years old. The word is either sufficient or it is not.
Ah, the sociology of religion in the West.
Stephen Meade Johnson, Unitarian minister.
Dominant religious traditions in this town, Baptists, Mormons, they're everywhere. It's not just Salt Lake, you know. They're all over. It's like jam on toast down here.
The Mormon Church has a little different thing going on that irritates some folks.
State ecclesiastical leader of the Mormon Church, Doug Laws.
And that is that we absolutely believe that God still speaks to us today. We don't believe that some people just wrote it and put it in the Bible. We absolutely believe that God still speaks to man. We believe the prophet of the church has the authority to receive inspiration and revelation from God.
So the spectrum would be on the left side of the panel. So far left that I am probably sitting by myself is me and the Unitarian Church. Unitarians are by and large humanists, many of whom are atheists. I mean, we're not sure we're even a real religion. And on my right, to his credit, Father Roger, Catholic priest, who is well established here. And God bless him. He did not equivocate at all when this happened. He hosted the vigil for Mathew that night.
I was really jolted, because when we did the vigil, we wanted to get other ministers involved, and so I called them, and it was like, we're going to stand back and see which way the wind's blowing. And that angered me immensely, because we are supposed to stand out as leaders. That is our job. And I just thought, what's going on here?
God has set boundaries, and it is our responsibility to learn. So what does God want? You study Scripture, you look at your leaders, and once you sort of get a feel for what's in bounds, then you get a feel for what's out of bounds. There was a proclamation that came around the family. A family is defined by one man, one woman, and children. That is a family. That's about as clear as you can state it. There is no sexual deviation in the Mormon Church. No leniency. We just think it's out of bounds.
I warn you, you will be mocked. You will be ridiculed for the singularity of your faith. But you let the Bible be your guide. It's in there. It's all in there.
Christian pastors, many of the conservative ones, were silent on this. Conservative Christians use the Bible to show the world it says here in the Bible. And the people believe, and they do, that the Bible is the Word of God. And how are you going to fight that?
I am a biblicist, which means the Bible doesn't need me to be true. The Bible is true whether I believe it or not. The Word is either sufficient or is not.
I arrived in Laramie on September 15th. I looked around, tumbleweeds, cement factory, and I asked myself, what in the hell am I doing here in Laramie? 3 weeks later, I found out what the hell I was doing in Laramie.
This morning, I was lucky enough to have breakfast with a university student named Zubaida Ullah. She's an Islamic feminist who likes to do things her own way.
I've lived in Laramie since I was 4. Yeah. My parents are from Bangladesh, and 2 years ago, because I'm Muslim, I decided to start wearing a scarf. Yeah, that's really changed my life in Laramie. Like, there's these people who say things to me like, what's that thing on your head? Why do you have to wear it? And like, I'm in the grocery store, I'm not going to get into Islam 101, so instead I say, well, it's part of my religion. And then they'll say this, and this is the worst part, because they'll say, I know it's part of your religion, but why? Like, how am I supposed to get into the doctrine of physical modesty and my own spiritual relationship with the Lord while I'm standing there holding my pop and chips, you know?
Yeah.
You know, it's so unreal to me that a group from New York is writing a play about us. That you guys came here to Laramie and are writing a play about us, and you're going to be on stage pretending that you're us. That's so weird.
Hello? Yes, hello. My name is Amanda Gronich, and I'm here in Laramie working with a theater company. I went to the Reverend your husband's services on Sunday, and I was extremely interested in hearing about his thoughts on recent events.
Well, I don't think he'll want to talk to you. My husband has very biblical views about homosexuality. He doesn't agree with that type of violence, but he also doesn't agree with that type of lifestyle, you know what I mean? And he was just bombarded by press after this happened, and the media's just been terrible about this whole thing.
Right, I understand. It must have been just terrible.
Oh yes, I think we're all just hoping this just goes away.
Right. Well, do you think maybe I could call back later and speak to him, just briefly?
Well, alright. You can call back tonight at 9 o'clock.
Thank you so much. I'll do that.
Today, Stephen and I went to the Fireside Bar. The Fireside is a college bar with a few regulars in the afternoon. They have pool tables and a stage area for karaoke. This is the last place that Matthew was seen in public, and the first person we talked to was Matt Nicholson, the owner.
My great-great-grandfather moved here all the way back in 1862. He was the one that owned Laramie's first ever opera house. It was called the Old Blue Front. More importantly, in 1870, Louisa Grandma Swain held the first free woman's ballot in the world. That's why Wyoming's called the Equality State. And because of that, what I really want to do is reestablish my bar business as the Old Blue Front Opera House. Get ready for this. And Good Times Emporium. You know, like I want to have a restaurant, I want to have a gift shop, maybe a pool hall, and I just want to do all of this shit. Every night's going to be this ladies' night. See what I'm saying? So the Fireside is going to be my first step towards the Old Blue Front Opera House and Good Times Emporium.
So what about the night that Matthew was here?
It was karaoke night. Like 20 or 30 people here. Matthew was sitting around, sitting right where you are, just hanging out. Hell, if you want to talk to anybody about this, you should talk to Matt Galloway. He was the poor kid that was bartending that night. His character stands for itself. Hey, is Galloway bartending tonight?
Okay, I'm gonna make this brief, quick, get it over with, but it'll be everything. Just the facts. Totally factual. Okay, here we go. Tuesday night, I clock in, 10 o'clock, normal time. 10:30, Mathew Shepard shows up, alone, sits down, orders a Heineken.
Bill LeBrie, friend of Mathew Shepard.
I'd like to drink Heineken and nothing else. Heineken even though you had to pay $9.50 for a six-pack. He'd always buy the same beer.
So, what can I tell you about Matthew? Well, if you had 100 customers like him, it'd be the most perfect bar in existence. And that has nothing to do with sexual orientation. Politeness, intelligence, mannerisms, taking care of me as in tips. You know, some people just sits down, please, thank you, offers dialogue within their vocabulary. So he takes it there. You know, didn't seem to be looking for anyone, just enjoying his drink and the company around. Then at around 11:30, 11:45, 11:30, that's when Aaron and Russell walk in. Now, I didn't know their names at the time, but they're the accused, so the perps. So, you know, they walk in, they're just very stone-faced, rude, dirty, grungy, gimme, that sort of thing. And then they, as you know, ordered a pitcher using dimes and quarters. I mean, that's something you don't forget. $5.50 in dimes and quarters? That's a freaking nightmare. So, anyways, they take the pitcher with them to the back of the pool room, and, you know, they're just hanging out in there. And then about half an hour later, I see them walking around again, no beer. And I wasn't going to ask them if they wanted another one, because they just paid for a pitcher for dimes and quarters. I have a really good feeling they don't have any more money.
Money meant nothing to Matthew because he came from a lot of it. Like, he would hand over his wallet in like 2 seconds because money meant nothing. His shoes might have meant something. They can say it was a robbery. I don't buy it. Not even for an iota of a second.
So then I noticed Aaron and Russell were talking to Mathew Shepard.
Aaron said that a guy walked up to him and said that he was gay and wanted to get with Aaron and Russ.
Kristen Price, girlfriend of Aaron McCain.
And that he got aggravated with it and said that he was straight and didn't want anything to do with him and walked off. He said that is when he and Russell went into the bathroom and decided to pretend to be gay, get him in the truck, and rob him.
Okay, no. I refute that. I 100% refute it. And I'll give you 2 reasons why. 1, character reference. They say that Matthew approached him. I mean, yeah, he was gay. He was a flaming gay, but he never approached me. Hello? Number 2, territorialism. That's the word I'll use for this. When Matthew was talking to Aaron and Russell, they were in his area. They weren't in the pool room, they were in Matthew's area. So, who approached who by that standard?
Matthew is also the type of person, he wouldn't not talk to someone for any reason. Like, if someone came up to him, he'd be like, oh, blah, blah, blah. Like, he just never had a problem striking up a conversation with anybody.
Matt did feel lonely a lot of times. Me knowing that and knowing how gullible Matt could be. He would have walked right into it. The fact that he was at the bar alone without any friends just makes him that much more vulnerable.
Now, this is what I'm testifying to, because I'm basically a key eyewitness in this case. What I'm testifying is that I saw Mathew Shepard leave. I saw 2 people leave after him. I didn't see their faces, I only saw the back of their heads, but that's when I noticed that Aaron and Russell were no longer around. You do the math.
I known Aaron a long time. Aaron was a good kid. I liked Aaron a lot. That's why I was so shocked when I heard this. I mean, I knew he was living out far. At his trailer house with his girl is what he told me. They just started dating last summer. They must have gotten pregnant right away because they had a kid. He was just 21 years old, but he was walking around with a kid. I mean, that's just the kind of person Aaron was, always dressing in like big clothes, Tommy Hilfiger, Polo, Gucci. At the time I knew him, he was just a young kid, He was just trying to, act tough, act cool. But you could get in his face about it, and he would back down. Like he was some kind of scared kid.
Sherry Anninson.
Russell was just so sweet. He was an Eagle Scout. His whole presence was just quiet and sweet. And I know people snap or whatever, and it wasn't a real intimate relationship. I was just his landlord. I did work with him at the chuck wagon too. And I remember him at the Christmas party. He was completely drunk out of his mind. And we were all just pretty much party time, but he wasn't belligerent or anything. His personality didn't change. He didn't change. And I remember him coming up to me and asking, when you get the chance, Sherry, could I get a dance? We never did get around to that dance though. But now, I just want to shake him. And I want to say, what were you thinking? What the hell were you thinking?
Defense. I've been out there 4 times. I've taken visitors. That place has become a pilgrimage site. Clearly, that's a very powerful personal experience for people to go on. It's so stark and so empty, and you can't help but think of Matthew up there, frozen for nearly 18 hours. That feeling of, God, my God, why have you forsaken me, comes to mind.
Bill Labrie, a friend of Mathew Shepard, took me out to the fence today. And I broke down the minute I touched it. I felt such a strong kinship to this young man. On the way back, I made sure no one saw me crying. Lee Fonikowski.
Greg was crying on the way back. I couldn't bring myself to tears, but I felt the same way. I have an interview this afternoon with Aaron Kreifels. He's the boy who found Matt at the fence. I don't think I'm up for it. I'm going to see if someone else can do it.
Well, I took off on my bicycle about 5 o'clock p.m. from my dorm. I kind of felt like going for a ride. So I went up to the top of Cactus Canyon, and I'm not super familiar with that area. So on my way back, I didn't know where I was going. So I was just kind of picking the way to go, which now makes me think that God wanted me to find him, because there was no way I was going that way. So I was ass deep in sand, and I wanted to turn around, but I didn't. So I was just going along, and there was this rock on the ground, and I just drilled it. I went over the handlebars and ended up on the ground. So when I was dusting myself off, I was looking around and I noticed something, which ended up to be Matt, and he was just laying there by a fence. And I just thought he was a scarecrow. I just thought Halloween is coming up, thought it was a Halloween gag, so I didn't think much of it. So I got up, got my bike, and was walking around the fence. And the fence is a buck-type fence. And that's when I noticed his hair. That was a major key for me, was his hair. And I thought he was a dummy. And I even noticed his chest just going up and down, and I thought it was some kind of mechanism. But when I noticed his hair, I knew it was a human being. So I ran to the nearest house, and I ran as fast as I could, and I called the police.
I responded to the call.
Officer Reggie Fleming.
At first, when I got there, one of the only things I could see was partially somebody's feet. So I got out of my vehicle and I raced over to the young man on the ground. He looked to be only about 13 or 14 years old. I mean, he was barely breathing, and we tried to provide breathing support, but his mouth wouldn't open. It just wouldn't open for me. So he was covered in dry blood all over his body. And the only place where he didn't have blood on him was down his face, where he had been crying. And his head was distorted real bad, like he had a real harsh head wound, like it was not normal.
I was working in the emergency room the night that Mathew Shepard was brought in, and I don't think we've seen a patient in this condition for a long time. Those of us who've worked in big city hospitals have seen stuff like this, but we have some people who have not worked in big city hospitals. And it's not something you expect here. You expect these types of injuries from a car going downhill at 80 miles an hour. You expect these gross injuries from something like that. You don't expect it from someone doing this to another person. But the ambulance report said it was a beating, so we knew.
There was nothing I could do. And if there was something I could have done to help, I would have done it. But there was nothing. And I was yelling at him. I was just saying things like, "Wake up! Hello!" But there was nothing. He didn't move. He didn't flinch. He didn't anything.
He was bound with a real thin white rope, and he was tied thumbs up in what we call cuffing position. It's what we use to handcuff people. And I tried to use my boot knife to cut him free, but I wasn't able to. I had to be extremely careful not to harm Mathew any further.
And your first thought is, well, certainly you'd like to think it's someone from out of town that comes through and beats somebody, but if someone's been beaten repeatedly, certainly it's something that offends us. I think that's a good word. It offends us.
I was finally able to get the knife through and cut him free, and so we flipped him over to his left side to help him breathe better, but he just stopped breathing. So we quickly put him back on his back, and that was just enough of an adjustment to get him breathing again. And I seen the EMS unit trying to get out where we were, so I ran over, and then we got a neck brace on him, and we scooted him onto a backboard out from underneath the fence, and then Rob drove the ambulance over to Evanston Valley Hospital emergency room.
The strange thing is, 20 minutes before Mathew was brought in, Aaron McKinney was brought in by his girlfriend. Apparently he got into a fight earlier on in town. And at this moment, I don't know there's a connection at all. And so I'm working on Aaron, and the ambulance comes in with Mathew. And so I tell Aaron to wait, and I go to treat Mathew. And I can tell immediately that his injuries are far beyond our capabilities. And so I called the neurosurgeon at Poudre Valley, and he's on the road in an hour and 15 minutes, I think.
They showed me a picture of Mathew, and days later I saw a picture of him. I wouldn't have recognized him.
And 2 days later, I found out the connection, and I was very struck. They were two kids. They were both my patients, and they were two kids. I treated both of them, their bodies, and for a moment, I wondered if this is how God feels when he looks down at us, because we're all his kids, our bodies, our souls, and I felt a great deal of compassion for both of them.
Our focus today is in Laramie, Wyoming, and the Albany County Courthouse, where Aaron James McKinney and Russell Arthur Henderson are being charged with the brutal beating of Mathew Shepard, a gay University of Wyoming student.
The arraignment was on Friday. Just right around lunchtime, I told myself, I said, I'm just going. So I walked a few blocks and I went. Has anybody told you about the arraignment? Well, there are about 100 people in the courtroom and just as many press people. And I think what mostly everyone was waiting on pins and needles for was the moment when the perpetrators walked in. More information had come out about the case, and the fact that the perpetrators were kids themselves, local kids. Well, what happened when they came in is, well, they came in their full orange jumpsuits and their shackles, and you could have heard a pin drop. It was incredibly solemn. Then the judge came in and did a reading. It was a reading on the evidence we had on our perpetrators. Well, it was a reading of the facts, and the reading of the facts was,
The essential facts are: the defendants, Aaron James McKinney and Russell Arthur Henderson, met Mathew Shepard at the Fireside Bar. After Mr. Shepard confided that he was gay, the subjects deceived Mr. Shepard into leaving with them in their vehicle to a remote area. Upon arrival at said area, both subjects tied their victim to a buck fence, robbed him, tortured him, and beat him. Both defendants were later contacted by officers of the Laramie Police Department, who observed inside the cab of their pickup a credit card and a pair of black patent leather shoes belonging to the victim, Mathew Shepard.
I don't think there was a single person in that courtroom who wasn't crying. I mean, it was like 5 minutes, but it just kept getting more and more horrific, ending with,
Said defendants left the victims begging for his life.
Sergeant King.
How could someone do this? I think a lot of people don't really understand, and even I don't really understand how someone could do something like that. We have one of the most vocal populations of gay people in the state, and it's pretty much live and let live.
My secret hope was that they were from somewhere else, but then of course you can create that kind of distance. We don't grow children like that here. Or I guess it's pretty clear that we do grow children like that here.
so that was the arraignment. And my response was pretty catatonic. I mean, not sleeping, not eating. Don't leave me alone right now.
More and more details came in about the sheer brutality, motivations, how this happened. And then, quite frankly, the media descended, and there's no time to reflect on it anymore.
Laramie, Wyoming, often considered the gem city of the plains, is now at the eye of the storm.
Aaron McKinney and his friend Russell Henderson came from the poor side of town.
As a gay college university student placed in the hospital in critical condition after severe beating.
People would like to think that what happened to Mathew Shepard was an exception to the rule, but it's an extreme version of what happens in our schools on a daily basis.
It's a tough business, as Matt Shepard knew, and all his friends know, to be gay in cowboy country.
It was huge. Yeah, it was herds, and we're talking hundreds of reporters, which makes a huge dent in this town's population. And we're not used to that type of attention to begin with. We're not used to that type of exposure.
Tiffany Edwards, local reporter. These people are predators. I mean, like this one journalist found one of the judges in the bathroom at the urinal and started asking questions. And the judge was like, "Excuse me, can I please have some privacy?" And the journalist acted offended that he asked for privacy. This is not how journalism started, like the Gutenberg Press, you know? I'll tell you what. When Hard Copy came and taped me, I taped them at the exact same time. I have everything I ever said on tape, so if they ever try anything funny, they better watch their ass.
Jim Geringer, a first-term Republican up for re-election.
You know, I am outraged and outright sickened by the heinous crime that was committed on Mathew Shepard. My heartfelt sympathies go out to the entire family involved.
Governor, you haven't pushed hate crime of legislation in the past.
I would like to urge the residents of Wyoming against treating one group of people in a way that gives others special rights or privileges. We will wait and see if the brutal beating and torturing of Mathew Shepard was motivated by hate.
So you've got the beginning of the news story, where they got the graphics in the background, and murder in Wyoming, and Wyoming's dripping red like it's got blood on it or something. And it's, what is this? This is sensationalism. And we're here like, wait a damn minute. We have these guys in jail in less than a day. I think that's pretty damn good.
And for us to be more or less maligned.
Eileen and Gil Engen.
That we aren't a good community. That the majority of us are good people.
You get bad apples once in a while, and I think that the gay community took this as an advantage, so that this is a good time for us to exploit this.
Phil McKinney, father of the accused.
Had this been a heterosexual these two boys decided to out and rob, this never would have made the national news. Now my son's guilty before he's even had a trial.
So, I do think that the media held people accountable because it made people think. Like, people were at home watching TV, listening to CNN, watching Jen Rather, and they were like, Jesus Christ, this isn't how it is here. Then, how is it here?
Rulon Stacy at Poudre Valley Hospital. Mathew Shepard had a month. 9 a.m. Saturday, October 10th.
I looked out there, and where there had been 2 or 3 reporters, there were 10, 15 still photographers, 20 or 30 reporters, and 10 video cameras. I looked out there and I thought, my God, what am I going to do? Mathew Shepard was admitted in critical condition approximately 9:15 p.m. October 2nd. When he arrived, he was in critical condition. Breathing support was being provided. Matthew's major injuries upon arrival include hypothermia and a fracture from behind his head to just in front of his right ear. This has caused bleeding in the brain as well as pressure on the brain. There were also several lacerations on his head, face, and neck. Matthew's temperature has fluctuated over the past 24 hours, ranging anywhere from 98 to 106 degrees. We've had difficulty controlling his temperature. Matthew's parents arrived 7 p.m. October 9th and are now at his bedside. The following is a statement from them. First of all, we'd like to thank the American public for their kind thoughts of Mathew and their fond wishes for his speedy recovery. We appreciate your prayers and goodwill and know there's something Mathew would appreciate too. We also have a special request for the members of the media. We ask that Mathew is very much in need of his family at this time. We ask that you respect his privacy as well as the family's so we can concentrate all our efforts, thought, and love on our son. Thank you very much.
Both Aaron McKinney and Russell Henderson pled not guilty to charges. Their girlfriends, Chastity Paisley and Kristen Price, also pled not guilty after being charged as accessories after the fact. On our next trip, we spoke with Chief Leading Investigating Officer on the case, Detective Rob Debris of the Albany County Sheriff's Department.
Well, I guess the thing that bothered me the most about all this was when I went down to Poudre Valley Hospital, where Mathew was. The thing that bothered me the most about all of this was seeing him, touching him. You see, as a homicide investigator, you look at a lot of bodies. This poor boy was just sitting here, fighting all his life. He was just trying to make it. I needed it so by the book.
I keep seeing that picture in my head when I found him.
Aaron Creeples.
And it's not pleasant whatsoever. I want to, get it out. And it's kind of unbelievable for me. You know, that I was the one who found him. Because the big question with me and my religion is, why did God want me to find him?
I know how to take care of myself, and I was irrationally terrified.
Catherine Connolly.
So what that means is not letting my 12-year-old son walk in the streets alone. Seeing a truck doing a U-turn and immediately thinking it's coming after me. Having to pull over because I'm shaking so bad, and in fact the truck wasn't coming after me, but my reaction was to have my heart in my mouth.
Ultimately, no matter how you dice it, I did have an opportunity.
Matt Galloway.
If I had amazing hindsight of 2020, I should have stopped what occurred. I just keep thinking, I shouldn't have had my head down for those 20 seconds washing dishes. These guys shouldn't have been talking to this guy. What the hell was I thinking?
So, you study. For hours and hours and hours, you study and study and study. Talking to the officers, making sure that they understand. Talking to your witnesses. Talk to the witnesses again. And then somehow, always just coming back to seeing this little glimpse of Matthew. I wanted it. I just needed it so tight. Even though I knew that there was no way that Matt was going to make it out of this.
One of the first things that happened when I got to the fence, Reggie Flutie, was there was just such an overwhelming amount of blood. And we tried to wear those protective gloves, but we had a really cheap sheriff at the time. He bought us those shake gloves, you put them on, and they just keep breaking. So finally, your mind tells you, don't hesitate. Help Matthew find an airway. That's what you keep thinking, don't hesitate,
The thing I wasn't telling you before is that Reggie is my daughter.
Marge Murray.
And when she told me she wanted to be a cop, well, I thought there's nothing better for her. She can handle whatever comes her way.
And so probably about a day and a half later, I get a call from the hospital, and they said, Matthew had HIV. And they said, you've been exposed, you've had a bad exposure. Because at the time, I was building a lean-to for my llamas, so my hands had a bunch of tiny cuts on them. So I was kind of screwed, you think, oh shoot.
Do you want to talk about losing sleep?
So I said, what do I do? And they said, get up here. So I got up there and we started the 8 easy drugs immediately.
They say if it's administered 36 hours after you've been exposed, maybe it can help you from stop getting the disease.
That is a mean, nasty medicine. Mean. I lost 10 pounds and a lot of my hair. Yeah.
And quite frankly, I wanted to lash out at somebody. Not at Matthew. Please understand that not one of us was mad at Matthew. But maybe one of us wanted to squeeze McKinney's head off. And I think about Henderson, two absolute human beings caused so much grief to so many people. It's been terrible for my whole family, especially for her and her kids.
I think it brought home to my girls what their mom really does for a living.
Well, Reggie, you know what I'm going to tell you now?
And my parents, they both said the same damn thing.
You're quitting that damn job!
And it's just a parent thing. They're terribly proud of you, whether you're handling a drunk or a case like this. It's just, they don't want you getting hurt.
Like I said, there's a right way, a wrong way, and then there's Reggie's way.
So finally I said, oh, for God's sake, lighten up, Francis.
You are so stubborn!
They say I'm stubborn, but I don't think so. It's just, okay, I've heard your opinion, and now here's mine. I'm 39 years old. What are you going to do? Spank me?
Reggie, don't give me any ideas!
That would look pretty funny, wouldn't it?
I just hope she doesn't go before me. I just couldn't handle that.
Philip Dubois.
This was a young person who read my statement in the Denver Post and sent an email to me directly, and it said,
You and the stray people of Laramie, Wyoming are guilty of the beating of Mathew Shepard, just as the Germans who look the other way are guilty of the deaths of the Jews, the Gypsies, and homosexuals. You have taught your stray children to hate their gay and lesbian brothers and sisters. Unless and until you acknowledge that Matt Shepard's death was not just a random occurrence, not just the work of a couple of random crazies, you have Matthew's blood on your hands.
and it was like, you can't possibly know what I'm thinking. You can't know what this has done to me, or my family, or my community.
That first week alone, vigils for Mathew Shepard were held in Laramie, Denver, Fort Collins, Colorado Springs, soon after in Detroit, Chicago, San Francisco, Atlanta, Michigan, and many more. In San Francisco, 5,000 people gathered, and in New York City, a political rally ended in civil disobedience and hundreds of arrests. The Poudre Valley Hospital website received close to 1 million visitors from across the country and around the world, all expressing hope for Matthew's recovery. As of 9 a.m. today, Mathew Shepard remains in critical condition. His family continues to emphasize that the media respect their privacy and would like to once again thank the American public for their kind thoughts and concern for Mathew.
There are certain things when I sit in church,
Jedediah Schultz.
and the Reverend will tell you flat out that he doesn't agree with homosexuality. And I don't know, I feel like I don't know enough about certain things to make the decision that I agree with it when I've been raised my whole life to think that it's wrong. Right now, I'd say that I don't agree with it. Yeah, that I don't agree with it. And maybe that's just because I couldn't do it with my religion and all. I just don't think that's what God intended to happen. And that doesn't mean I hate them. I'm not going to persecute them or anything. I'm just saying that's not going to come in between me and another person.
You know, it's preached in schools that being gay is okay, and yada, yada, yada.
Conrad Miller.
And if my kids, if they asked me, I'd sit them down and I'd say that this is what gay people do, and this is what animals do. And I tell them, this is the life, this is the lifestyle, this is what they do. And I would say it straight to their faces. This is why I believe that it's wrong.
There's more gay people around than what you think.
Murdoch.
And it doesn't bother anybody, because most of them that are gay or lesbian, they know damn well who to talk to. If you step out of line, you're asking for it. Now, some people are saying he made a pass at him. Now, I'm not excusing their actions, but it made me feel better. You don't pick up regular people. And, you know, it made me feel better. Because maybe it's partially Mathew Shepard's fault and partially the guys who did it's fault. You know, maybe it's 50-50.
Yes. As a lesbian, I was more concerned with my safety.
Zachy Salmon.
I think we all were. I mean, I think that down inside, we all are afraid that this can happen to us at any time. And I'd be afraid to walk down the street and show any affection to my partner. You don't do that here in Laramie.
Well, there's this whole idea, you leave me alone, I leave you alone.
Jonas Slaughter.
And it's even in some Western literature, you know, live and let live. That is such crap. I mean, my friends bring it up sometimes, even my gay friends bring it up, and I'm like, that is such crap, you know? I mean, basically what it boils down to is if I don't tell you I'm a queer, you won't beat the crap out of me. I mean, what's so great about that? That's a great philosophy.
We went to the candle vigil, Zubaida Club, and it was so good to be with people who felt like shit. I kept feeling like I don't deserve to feel this bad, you know? Oh, and there was this one person, and he went up there and he said, blah, blah, blah. Well, basically he said, let's show the world that Laramie is not this kind of place. But Laramie is this kind of place. Because if Laramie wasn't this kind of place, then why would things like this happen here? Like, that's a lie. That's like looking at an Escher painting and being all confused, even though it's just like totally a circular logic. I mean, we have to mourn this. We have to be sad that we live in a town, a state, a country where shit like this happens. I mean, there are people trying to distance themselves from this crime. We need to own this. I feel everyone needs to own this. We are like this. We are like this. We are like this.
Today, I went to the fireside, and I met two friends of Aaron McKinney, named Shannon and Jen. Here's what they had to say. So, you two knew Aaron well, right?
Yeah, we both did. When I first found out, I thought it was really, really awful. I mean, I didn't know whether Aaron was just messed up or he was coming down or what, but Matthew had money. Shit, he had better clothes than me. Matthew was a little rich bitch.
Don't call him a rich bitch, though. That's not right.
Well, I'm not saying he's a bad guy either. I mean, he was just at the wrong place, wrong time, said the wrong things, and I don't know. I won't lie to you. There were times where I was messed up on meth and thought about going out and robbing. I never did, but it was there. It was easy money.
Aaron's done that thing before. They both done it. There's been times where they go up to Cheyenne and come back with maybe $300. I don't know if they target particularly gay people, but anybody that looks like they have a lot of money and they can overpower, that's fair game.
In this crime, do you believe that there could have been any involved homophobia that contributed to this?
Probably. I probably would have pissed him off that Matthew was gay. I mean, the gay people that I've seen him interact with, he was fine as long as, they didn't try to come on to him or anything.
As long as they didn't do it in front of him.
Do you get the impression that Aaron knew other gay people?
I'm sure he did. I mean, he worked up at the KFC, and there's people up there that, yeah. But I'm not saying it's bad or anything, because, half the people I know here in Laramie are gay.
If Aaron were right here, what would you say to him?
Well, first, I'd ask him to do any more tweak.
If I saw Aaron, I'd be like, man, why'd you mess up like that? But, I probably just want to make sure he's doing okay in there. I'm sure